good afternoon. My name is Larry Forsyth. I'm the Senior Manager for HR and WHS at Australian Business Consulting and Solutions. Welcome to our webinar on creative HR practices and recruitment solutions. Today I am joined by my colleague and a friend, Emily Brewer, who is the National Manager for Recruitment with Talent Options. Welcome, Emily.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good to see you again, and thanks for coming in. Nice to be working together again. So today, we wanted to take you through the webinar around human resource management and recruitment practices and how we can share with you what our clients are doing, what are we doing, and what we see is contemporary and traditional best practice in the HR and recruitment world. So from a HR lifecycle entry to exit perspective, I thought this was a good slide just to start with. And so really, I'm taking, I suppose, making the assumption that you're advocates as viewers for the HR lifecycle. And so when you think of how you align what you do, your process and systems, from a diversity and inclusion perspective, so all the way from onboarding through to workforce planning as an example, we want to make sure that we align what we do, we enable our people to learn and develop. We want to reward them, and then we look at the source of how that is all really coming together. So ultimately, we're hearing that the people we work with, our clients and our non-members, it's about making sure that those processes and systems are in place and that we're following a nice process and structure. Believe it or not, people need that guidance. They are looking for that, and they're looking for their managers to support them. What we're seeing and hearing from our clients, and based on our research and thought leadership paradigms, is that the most urgent HR issues are coming from a global leadership perspective, certainly retention and engagement. It's also about managers reskilling and upskilling from a HR perspective, because it is managers taking on a lot more of the HR capabilities and competencies these days, and also ensuring that you bring in the right people at the right time. So talent acquisition and, of course, access to talent is one of the main and urgent HR issues coming through. So from the Human Capital Trends 2014 survey, we researched and identified that 51 HR people considered that this was very important, and alarmingly, 24% thought it was absolutely urgent. So some of the current issues with talent acquisition.
Yes, I wanted to go through that and just share with you that 52% of skilled jobs went unfilled, and that was because companies couldn't locate the right talent. Some statistics from PR News show that of new hires, 46% of them fail within the first 18 months of their employment, whilst of new hires, 45% are only fair to marginal performers. So does that tell us that 91% of new hires are a disappointment? That's a really big number, and it comes at an even bigger cost. And in a survey conducted by Harris Interactive, it identified that 41% that a bad hire costs more than $25,000, and 25% of those surveyed said the cost was over $50,000. So what caused this? A number of factors contributed to the cost of a bad hire, and we can quickly conclude that some of them include the advertising, the job description, the interview, incorrect reference check-in, and do you really have an understanding of the role that you're recruiting for? Have you asked the person doing the job what they really do? Harris Interactive research also demonstrated some of the worrying costs to your business in hiring a poor recruit. 41% stated that this caused less productivity within their organization. 40% said they lost time in recruiting, inducting, and training another worker. 37% stated they lost money recruiting and training another worker. 36% stated it affected their employee morale. And 22% stated that a poor recruit impacted on their clients.
So, interesting, Emily, and it certainly aligns with some of the research that we've identified with and that our people and clients are telling us, that there is a bit of a war for talent. Some of the stats that I've heard of is that it can take $20,000 to bring in a new employee, $20,000 to actually train them, and keep them empowered, and $20,000, unfortunately, when and if they leave. So it's a lot of money that we're spending on our people and finding the right people. So we're saying that there certainly is a bit of a war for talent, and some of those pressures certainly linked to some of the comments I made before. So from a globalization perspective, we're seeing a much faster and more rapid rate of technology. We're seeing changing workforce expectations, particularly when you think of the baby boomers now all the way to the millennials coming through. And certainly the need for reskilling of staff in the areas of recruitment and HR management. And certainly not last and not least, but we're seeing a huge social media expansion. So you need to ensure that you find the right talent, obviously, that you get to the right talent, certainly before your competition does. And how do you do that?
Well, I wanted to get onto the good stuff and some successes I have seen in the recruitment of an amazing hire. And I wanted to give you a case study we did recently. Wanted was a marketing graduate. So we were recently engaged by our client to recruit a social media marketing graduate to join their team. And what happened, our client prepared an excellent, well-thought-out job specification and engaged our services as the recruitment specialist for this hire. So how did we do it? Many people see our services as experienced recruiters and just doing the standard interview and sending resumes to our clients. But my team here at Talent Options, we tailor each recruitment piece to our client need. During our meeting with the manager of the role, the manager of the department, and the HR team, we discussed different recruitment models, and we suggested to the client a unique and different attraction strategy for the role, which opened their eyes to a very different recruitment model. Our advertising for this role was heavily focused to the social media market. So instead of the usual Seek advertising, we put this role out to the world of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we even run a YouTube campaign to attract the candidates we wanted to meet. As good recruiters, we always use our networks and talent pools, and we dived headfirst into that as well, again using our social media portals to attract them to the role. Why, may you ask? Well, if that's the role, do you not think that's where they're going to look for a job? So wading through a large amount of applications can seem time-consuming, but we always spend time ensuring we respond to each and every application, remembering that we're always our client's first engagement to their organization. A resume does not tell the whole story, and we did not want to see our amazing shortlist placed into another role. And this initial stage was completed very, very quickly in less than 1 week by our team. Taking the time to contact those not suitable for this role also gives us opportunity to explore other vacancies that may suit their requirements. We tailor every piece of recruitment to them. So a bespoke telephone screen was undertaken, asking, yes, the usual initial questions, such as do they have a car and their location, but we specifically asked questions relating to the exciting role, and we tailored each stage of the process, which was important to our team. So what did the candidates experience next? Well, you'd be amazed to hear the process, but the results we found were truly amazing. Testing. Yes, we put them through some tough challenges. Firstly, assessing their soft skills, such as their ability to use PowerPoint, Excel, and Word, their data entry skills, and assess their speed and accuracy. We set them a writing task where they needed to report on our clients' social media platforms and their understanding of the business's use of that. After all that testing, we decided to get our shortlist together in one big room, and an assessment center we decided was the best platform for their first face-to-face contact. So what did they experience in that initial 2 hours? We were fortunate enough to use the boardroom facilities at our client's Sydney offices to showcase our client to the candidate. In the room were 15 very keen graduates. We had 3 experienced recruitment consultants and the hiring manager for the position. During that assessment, they saw a presentation on the business, had the hiring manager introduce themselves and talk about the role, had a brief on the culture, the EVP, and everyday working life, a group exercise, a discussion on a social media topic, and a group interview. Our team had scoring sheets that assessed each candidate on their ability to work together as a team, their presentation skills, their industry knowledge, ability to answer questions, and communication skills was amongst the things that went towards the suitability for their role. Candidate feedback was amazing, and we had a number of candidates contact us following the process to thank us for the afternoon, and they all mentioned how refreshing the approach was. From there, we presented a short list of 3 candidates for our hiring manager to meet on a one-to-one basis using a set interview brief. We needed to keep consistency within the approach. As it was the first time this manager had recruited, we helped him along the way with the process. Following this, we found our preferred candidate, and the only thing left to do was to check her references. Again, writing these using a competency framework specifically based on the requirements of the role and ensuring that gaps were accounted for. We had a good 2-year picture of the candidate. Our result was a candidate who not only had the skills to do the job, but had a true picture of the company, the team, the office, and even a taster of the everyday job. However, our job does not end there. So what happens post our placement of the candidate? Well, HR take over a lot of that work, but here our talent options team speak to every candidate and client during their first 3 months to support them during the early stage of their career. The results for both parties have been fantastic, and think how proud you feel if you got the job after that. How engaged was that candidate? And can you imagine meeting and then beating the competition at assessment centre stage? So what happens to the other 14? Well, it's about matching the right people to the right job. So that's a whole different story. But what we always do is ensure the candidates are informed throughout the process and give real feedback if they're not successful at that time.
Emily, wow, thorough. Thank you. Excellent. I know I want to go to Talent Options looking for my next job because I know I'll be certainly looked after.
Very
Fantastic.
well looked after.
So from that in mind, thinking about the evolving technologies and those HR practices that we're currently using with our clients and our members and non-members. And what I wanted to bring first to the attention of the listeners and viewers was the evolution of organisations. And I'm taking into account, again, that I'm preaching to the converted here, but it's interesting to look at the model when we think back to the 30s and 40s. So from the commencement of a military-style organisation through the evolution right now to our free marketplace, our innovative marketplaces and the internet, of course, social media and the new internal and external marketplaces that we're working with. So we've certainly seen over the years that organizations have become centralized, decentralized, centralized, decentralized, and it is evolving. So it's nice to have a look at that. Considering now where HR can certainly support from a workforce planning perspective, and so what we do is we work with our clients around planning for the future. We say keep calm, HR is here to help. And so, for example, your business may be in the midst of growing into new markets, and we're certainly working with a lot of organizations that are acquiring and merging. You may also be using new technology and positioning yourself in a more global way. And so in this way, you must make sure that the staff that you retain, and certainly we're seeing a lot more people stay in the workforce now, having to work possibly up to the age of 70, we're seeing that we need to make sure that we promote, we empower, and that we prepare. We don't want to leave any gaps that need to be filled, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in the right way for the right reasons. So from a HR perspective, what will you see as an HR manager or an HR person in your organization in terms of what's going on and where HR and recruitment may be heading? So we see it quite clearly that it's possible that you might see your staff being overwhelmed by what's taking place. And certainly the changes, and we're working with organizations around how those strategies and actions can be addressed. You might have staff that are not totally tech savvy, and in that way it's certainly about learning and development, and we would work with our learning and development team around that. Limited skill sets for providing creative and innovative practices and solutions for recruitment and selection could be also a gap that you're identifying. And so in that way, that's when we would certainly be working with talent options to support and progress. So Emily has actually outlined some of this, and from a traditional interview perspective, what we would be saying to you and recommending and suggesting is that some things should not be measured in an interview, and they include the following. So making sure that historical information doesn't predict the future, making sure that your interview questions certainly relate to the current needs. You don't want to have inconsistent questioning. We wouldn't recommend that you don't have weighting and scoring sheets because this could be misleading. And you want to make sure that it's about where they're going in the future and what sort of questions that you might ask them around that. Because we do want to retain, train, and attract our people. So just make sure that those questions relate. So with that, things change. And Emily, some of those techniques that you're finding.
Some of those techniques that we have found is taking an individual approach to interview techniques based on the position and industry, employment of a social strategy, and using unique methods of engagement and attracting talent. I wanted to give you a case study of a sales manager hire that was recently done by my team. And in this example, we were approached by a small client who runs an outsourced call centre here in Sydney. In what was a very rushed telephone conversation, we needed to help a client who had a replacement of a wrong hire. We were told that they directly hired a person for their sales manager position after a recommendation from a friend of the business owner, and this person had walked out after a better job offer. An appointment was made the same day to find out what had gone wrong, and after some investigation, it appeared they'd not interviewed the candidate properly, exploring basic questions such as why are you looking for a new job and even what salary were you on. Now, the client was so embarrassed as to what happened, and his main concerns were that he needed to recruit this role discreetly as he did not want his company branded about. My team took an hour to fully go into the brief and the requirements of the role, and in fact we discovered it was not a sales manager's role at all, but in fact a sales executive. There were no people to manage, but this could change. We went into detail as to what the company does, and they manage sales campaigns for large corporate customers, so this position would see all new client acquisitions come through this hire. So our recruitment campaign with sales executives are always a tough one, as we need to move fast to ensure we found the right candidate. In conjunction with Larry's team, we started from writing the job specification through to benchmarking the salary and even planning future scope for the development of the role. Our brief is to find quickly a hungry and experienced business-to-business sales executive able in the future to develop and grow a team under them. How we did this one? It was easy, really. With the experience in the team, our team usually spend as much time talking to candidates as they do our clients, so we immediately went to our talent pools. These could be candidates who were potentially looking for new roles and allowed us to keep hold of their details on file for any future jobs. After a late night talking that night to candidates, we shortlisted 5 for our consultants to interview. We did this one on a one-to-one basis with a strong emphasis on competency questioning. Yes, as this was a sales position, however, we also did a dummy sales call and asked them to role-play a meeting selling our clients' products based on a brief they were given. All of these were recorded, of course, with our candidates' permission, and we chose the top 3 candidates to present to our client. Our meeting 48 hours later with the client, we presented him our interview shortlist and assisted preparing the interview format the following day. We listened and watched the role plays with the client and went through each candidate in detail and why they wanted this opportunity. We suggested an interview with a presentation by the candidate, preparing a small business plan and detailing what they would do in the first 3 months if they were successful. At the client interview, he was so impressed that it resulted in 2 job offers. One candidate was heavily focused on the sales and the other was more account management. Now, all that time it took was 1 week. And 2 weeks later, we checked in to find 2 very eager candidates who our client said was following their business plans, that they delivered at the interview extremely well. Since that panicked phone call, we've further placed 2 candidates, one that's sitting in their accounts team and the other supporting their IT. So why recruit that way? Time was of the essence, and for sales positions, what better way to engage a candidate by tasking them with the business plan that basically got them the job they wanted. By benchmarking the salary correctly, we could attract and ensure the retention of this challenging role, a true mix of 2 extremely happy and productive candidates. So when we look at recruitment trends, When we're looking at mobile, even though the last year was the year of the mobile platform, the impact of this platform in recruiting will continue to expand and grow. The emergence of technical capabilities that allow the direct, instant application for jobs from mobile phones will soon become very mainstream. A multitude of startups will continue their development of a variety of recruiting-focused mobile apps. When we look at social sourcing candidates over the web is critical to success today. The granddaddy of these solutions is LinkedIn, which sells the LinkedIn recruiter tool to HR organizations. Most recruiters will tell you that having a LinkedIn recruiter's license is the cost of entry. Many of the recruiters I talk with rely heavily on LinkedIn, but no longer see it as a competitive advantage, just because everyone else has it too. A whole barrage of exciting tools have been created to help companies find and source key candidates. In the technology space, interesting tools are out there looking at all your social footprint to evaluate your technical prowess. These companies mine your personal code, postings, and other social information to create a profile and actual competency ratings based on your social data. A data-driven approach to operations continues to be the benchmark standard. Even though most business functions have long ago shifted to data-driven decision-making, the practice is strikingly unusual within recruiting. Google continues to separate itself from every other firm in its comprehensive data-driven approach to recruiting and its use of predictive metrics. Its recent data-driven research on the ineffectiveness of many traditional recruiting tools can only be classed as groundbreaking. Live video interviewing steadily grows in acceptance, and live video interviews have now proven its effectiveness, so will continue to expand until it becomes the standard practice, at least for initial interviews. Online candidate assessment continues towards the mainstream as online technical knowledge and skill assessment options become cheaper and more effective. They will continue their growth until they become mainstream. Their impact is high because they reduce unnecessary interviews and they can dramatically improve the quality of hire. Remote work continues to expand the talent pool. The growth of technology and the willingness of managers to accept remote positions will continue to dramatically expand the numbers of available recruits for these remote work jobs. The shift to remote work will also force recruiting to increase its capability to find land candidates around the globe. Larry, I'm going to hand over to you for a really interesting case study.
Yes, talking about interesting. And so this is one from Volkswagen in Germany. So what actually happens here, or what did happen, was that Volkswagen needed talented new mechanics. They were finding that the skill had dropped off. This was not happening so much in their TAFE colleges, you might say. And so what they sent is undercover employees to drop off damaged cars at repair shops across Germany. So on the undercarriage of each car was a job ad, as you can see from the picture. This had an incredible impact on Volkswagen in that it put them in a place of uniqueness from a job ad perspective, and they considered that this innovation enabled them to attract a number of new talented mechanics and recruiters, and they were able to interact with each mechanic when they dropped off the car, giving them a feel for whether the worker would fit in with the company culture. So it wasn't just your traditional ad that was laid out generically in the local paper. It was doing it in a much different way, and so they were able to identify who might fit, who had the skills and capabilities, and it was a nice way to innovatively let it roll out. So this now leads me into and to share with you the world of gamification. So what we're seeing in the HR world is that it's not so much a new concept, but it's certainly something that is now being linked to recruitment more than ever before. So gamification actually plays a part in the candidate attraction process. It certainly assists with the candidate selection. It enables an assessment of qualifications and possibly even references beforehand, before the formal interview. And gamification actually can facilitate the offer process. So a couple of case studies to share with you. In essence, application or gamification is the application of game mechanics and psychology to non-gaming scenarios such as business, process, and programs. So what we're seeing is companies are using video games to recruit employees. In that way, they can certainly source and look at the potential employee, bringing them into a virtual location and challenge. In that way, it supports and increases the brand awareness and can certainly introduce your company to applicants who hadn't previously considered a job in that industry. Some of those included, and before we go there, I thought this was pertinent, and forgive me, the wording is small, but from a Gartner hype curve perspective, we're seeing that gamification is certainly almost at the top. So if you look just underneath the box on the left-hand side, we see crowdsourcing is certainly very popular right now, but gamification is certainly there in the mix. And so what we're saying is that this is what we're seeing global organizations do, and it's something that you can certainly think about and reflect on how it might relate to how you do your recruitment process. So how can HR use this? Well, HR actually is in the people game, and we're certainly in the business game. And so when we think of the soft skills about attraction, development, engaging, right over to the harder skills around strategy development, budgeting, policy and procedures and legislation and regulation, there needs to be a structure. So it's not always just about compliance, but if you don't have the people game, then how can you use and work with the business game? So how gamification helps onboarding is it's about pre-joining, so certainly engaging in that way, looking at onboarding over a 90-day period, which it may seem like a long time right now, but to bring in the right candidate, it sometimes takes time. And I know that Emily certainly gave an example there around bringing in someone quite quickly, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's always the right way. And the way that that works and how we align with the employer, certainly we'll want to customize and tailor and deliver as quickly as we can, but we would be suggesting and recommending that you look at the gamification model conceptually to support the onboarding process. For example, the Australian Navy uses gamification, and so in this way they have a virtual game, and you can actually sign into this register, so there is a profile that's built. But what they started to identify was that does that person fit and does that person have the skill to be actually working on a warship, for example, or in a submarine. So as you learn the skills of the Navy combat console personnel, you have the chance to utilize the advanced detection and location equipment, etc. And so this was launched in 2013, and what the Navy has now seen versus their traditional recruitment methods and also their innovative recruitment methods is this is another way to be able to bring people on board from the very beginning and identify the skills that may fit within and certainly with the culture. Marriott too have been looking at gamification and using that. So what players actually do is they manage a virtual kitchen, as an example. They purchase the supplies on a budget and manage employees. And what this has done to Marriott globally is that it's supported and raised their brand awareness. It's identified talent across the globe. And it's played in actually 120 countries. And by increasing the traffic to the career site, by using the clicking and doing it for real, has enabled Marriott to identify people that can fit into their culture and certainly coming on board with that skill and competency. So what we're seeing here is a traditional process versus the new paradigm. So in the traditional process, we saw that it was a 5-step process. We see search for jobs, read about the company, hear a testimonial, etc., all the way through to looking for the right fit, making sure the job schedule fits, the training and development needs. And in a way, this is almost like a part of and is in fact a part of the HR life cycle. And so when we think of the traditional process into the new paradigm, as I mentioned, it's coming down to around a 4-part process. So the gamification enables the applicant to hear about the company, read about the company, to answer some basic questions, find out about the EVP that Emily mentioned earlier. This engages from the very beginning, and it also accelerates and fast-tracks the high potentials. It enables them to connect, then to sign in, select the job, and then from there moving into the more in-depth interview process, fit and job placement. So it leads us to the volume recruiting, Emily.
Yeah, I wanted to, and a question that was asked is how can HR effectively screen and manage a pool of candidates that is typically 10 to 20 times the size without jeopardizing the candidate and the hiring manager experience? I really wanted to talk through an 8-stage recruitment model with you, which many organizations I've seen use it, and we typically use when we're dealing with a volume recruitment campaign. And it starts firstly with the planning. It is important that our recruitment team links closely with our clients' various departments in operations, finance, IT, HR, and project management to build a resource plan that ensures delivery against the company's strategic objectives. Critically, the plan needs to be flexible enough to withstand unpredictable internal and external factors, such as sourcing enough available candidates. Key factors to establish at this stage will be things like employee type, the values required, location, time, cost, and deploy methodology. We then move on to technology and management information, and you need to use a tailored candidate management system to manage applications and track progress due to the sheer volume of applications received. However, while technology provides a back office governance through consistent tracking and reporting, candidates do not want to communicate to a potential employer through software. Our experience has shown regular personal contact with candidates is essential to keep the process running smoothly, retain the best candidates, and generate positive feeling around our candidates' reputation and brand. Having an efficient candidate management system allows you to manage talent pools for future volume recruitment pushes. By managing a pool of close second candidates and communicating with them regularly to check status and availability provides you with a fast and effective means of fulfilling future recruitment needs with candidates that were already engaged and informed about the organization, its value and cultures. We then move on to attraction. And once the resource to manage the recruitment plan is agreed, a targeted, comprehensive attraction strategy incorporating your key values can be tailored to sector and location. For example, you could attract a target audience through advertising in a whole different means of ways, even at bus stops and cafes, and close to the location of your office. You can engage candidate attraction using local radios, posters, company websites, job boards, and every type of social media that we have discussed. This always drives awareness and applications, but the approach needs to be targeted and straightforward. At this very early stage, it is critical to communicate key messages about the nature of the roles and the values required. This allows for natural deselection, so those who reach the screening stage have the right attributes and availability. When you move on to screening, clarity about exactly what criteria candidates are being screened against and the consistency which they are applied to is critical to the success of this process. It is important to identify precisely what is being assessed and at what stage. For this example, we use a mix of technical screening, have they done this role before, values and behavioral screening, do they enjoy customer service, for example, and fact-based screening, for example, the candidate's availability to work the shift patterns. By commencing this initial contact through structured telephone interviews, it also allows us to manage the candidate's time to understand the nature and the requirement of the role more clearly. When managing this initial screening, it is important to have consistency throughout the process to ensure fairness and measurable data. By doing this over the telephone, it's also an ideal time to notify candidates about the next step, manage their expectation, and reduce queries. During a campaign we did recently, the screening was done at various times outside of the standard office hours to ensure we could quickly process all applications. We then move on to assessment, and the key to running a successful selection event is to build the right approach for the right audience. For an example, we used a full-scale assessment center, and sometimes we refer to this as a recruitment event. By doing this, it instantly puts candidates at ease and minimizes fears about performing well, making candidates feel relaxed so they can give their best. By regularly recapping what was taking place throughout our recruitment events, helped everyone involved feel relaxed and minimize confusion. The overwhelming positive feedback received from participants after each recruitment event confirmed the effectiveness of this approach. We then go on to our pre-employment checks, and it is vital to ensure at this stage of the process that this process is watertight. Overlook or rush the collection of certificates and right to work or identification documents, references, credit or criminal record bureau checks, and you can find yourself in breach of the law. When we're looking at managing the candidate communication in every volume campaign, taking a personal approach to candidate communication is a highly effective way of installing trust and keeping candidates informed and engaged. By ensuring the candidates are best informed at the initial stage of who and when to contact, ensures we stop all negative client feedback in an age when often negative feedback can gain momentum via social media. Offering and onboarding once the offer letters are sent, many organisations assume that the recruitment process is over. However, by not continuing to engage, new employees up to and beyond their start date can risk undoing some of the hard work and planning that has gone before. Disillusioned and unprepared new employees will inadvertently impact on productivity levels and service quality.
Emily, wow. Excellent model, thank you. So with this in mind, how are these techniques going to benefit you? So what we're saying with the traditional, with the new progressive innovative models, including gamification, we believe that it's certainly going to improve outreach, it's going to improve quality and talent pipeline, you're going to have better quality of hire, it's going to have a greater impact on your brand, and in fact, we're going to see, or you will see, higher conversion rates. So with this in mind, from a conclusion perspective, what we're seeing and the research is telling us that the size of the gamification market, for your information, currently estimated at around $100 million, will grow by more than $2.8 billion by 2016. And top gamification vendors are projecting a 197% growth in 2014, up from 155 in 2013. So it certainly is something to think about. Gartner are saying that by 2014, and that's now, more than 70% of global 2,000 organizations will have at least one gamified application, driving 50% of all innovation. So with this in mind, Emily...
Yeah, my advice is really to do your planning. Take each role and be different for every position that you recruit. And be consistent in your planning and methodical in your execution is possibly my advice.
Absolutely, best practice structure there. I wanted to move to a question, and we've got a few that have come through. Emily, please jump in wherever. This is from Lisa T, and she asks, but what about SMEs that don't have the dollars to use an organization such as Talent Options or even an HR recruitment resource system? Well, I'm thinking that, as you mentioned, Emily, it's about having the basics right at the least. So in this day and age, okay, if you can't afford it, it's about making sure that you have got a process, be it the basic process, and then building on that and improving and continuously progressing and improving how you do it. When you're bringing on more people, you're building the business. I'm really thinking that what we're seeing is if you want to attract and retain your people, then it is about continually improving. So from the beginning, if it's basic, then that's still good. But as you grow, then it might mean that you need to be supported by someone like Emily or myself. What do you think, Emily?
Absolutely, and by investing in the using a specialist, you'd be amazed to see how much money you do actually save. When we go back to the example of a bad recruitment and a bad hire, we can see how much that costs the business. So by investing a little at the beginning, we'll give you a greater return at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Another one here. So Kylie P asks, best practices for maintaining engagement in key talent in a smaller organization with limited career opportunities. a little bit similar. I'm really what we see and what we believe and would be recommending that, and a little bit of what you mentioned before too, Emily, which resonated with me around values and behaviours. So in that, if you want to make sure that you keep key talent, even if you are a smaller organisation, sometimes when it's tough, and we see this in the economy, is that if you haven't got strong values and behaviours to hold on to, then what's left? What do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think that's all I thought. I was quite interested in another question that Roseanne P. had mentioned, and I'm just wading through quite a lot of questions at the moment. And she was looking at the best way to attract mature age workers. Obviously, a social media platform is not an option. But as I said at the beginning, go into the process with each end result with what you want. With that one in mind, I'd look at where do your mature age workers look for work, and I would start the recruitment process there. So start at the beginning where you think that person would look, and the rest is quite easy. So let's move on to another one.
I had another one from Janine C., and she asks, how would you measure staff engagement versus just presenteeism? Well, what we do is that we actually develop, design and implement staff engagement surveys, culture surveys. So that is certainly one way of measuring staff engagement. From a presenteeism perspective, I think that you would actually find that through your staff engagement survey that you would identify how present your people are. It leads me to the subject matter, which is a whole different webinar around executive presence. And that's not just necessarily about the executive, it's about how well you listen to your employees and how you consult with them. And in that way, you can start to engage how present they may be and the work that they undertake. So I believe that actually is very similar. I'm not sure that it would be versus. So that would be my comment to Janine C. Emily, did you have another one there?
Yes, Simon L., with regards to your social media job ads and screening 500-plus applications. This is a world we see a day in, day out in my office. I would say for your social media ads, I'd put them out for a very short period of time, and then stop the process of attracting candidates until you've screened those applications. So sometimes we might just pop an advert out for even the afternoon just to see, and then stop the advertising on our social media platforms at that point to assess the candidate and the applications, because you can always go back to market once you've screened that initial route. So if you're getting too many, stop them coming in and stop the process, and make sure that you wade through them, because remembering that they're the first point of contact they have with your organisation.
Yes, that certainly counts from the very beginning. Karen L. asks, how does a frontline manager engage staff to be actively and sustainably engaged? Well, I come from the background and the belief, Karen, that it's about taking the time to spend it with your staff in the first place. That could be done in a way by work-in-progress meetings, individual time meetings, and in that way you're certainly spending the time with your employees. So, for example, let's just say you had 10 employees, you were to spend an hour or two with them on a monthly basis. You undertake the concept of a work-in-progress meeting. In that way, you're certainly commencing an engagement process, and in that way, they're certainly being actively engaged with you. And all of this actually does create sustainability, you might say. So it's spending the time with them, listening to them, consulting with them, and getting their ideas around how else they think the organisation can go forward and progress as well. I see another one coming through from Chris R. What are some options for rewarding and retaining staff that doesn't mean an increase in pay? Emily, what do you think?
I don't know. There's a whole heap of different options you can use. And rewarding staff, simple things at the beginning, and it's saying thank you. Anything like that. People like to feel valued at work, and even the smallest thing is thank you. Birthday cake doesn't have to be of value all the time. What else do you think?
Look, what we develop for our clients around this is actually rewards and recognition programs, and they include some of those things that you mentioned. And so it's, whether it's a very formal annual event, monthly events, biannual events, but by actually making sure or deciding that you want to have that in place supports other elements to employee engagement and culture. And that's about wellness programs, employee assistance programs. And in this way, if your staff are reaching out, looking for support, it's not just retaining and rewarding them, it's about engaging to create that sustainability.
Janine C. has asked, when you give the example of using social media to recruit someone to work in social media, how many applications did we receive? I'll start with your first question. We received about 140 applications. I can remember rightly screening from them. But again, we chose a period of time to put that advert out. We only actually put that out to market for 24 hours and stopped advertising at that point due to the sheer volume. And it's something we needed to stop quite quickly. Any questions with regards to using it in government? It's a good thing, maybe. It depends on the role, and we particularly chose that position to recruit within the social media role because of the position it was doing. If I was going to market with for a finance manager, maybe I would choose a different way to position it. But I just think that you follow the lead of the role that you're recruiting for.
Susan Yu asks, there are, or mentions and says, there are advantages and disadvantages with including salary ranges in job advertisements. What are our thoughts? Well, my thought is that you say that up front. I think it's about you want to get clear, you want clarity, and you want to quantify and qualify what it is that you're actually offering as a job ad. So, yeah, it can be a salary range. We see this very much in government, but I think at the least it's about advertising what the salary is that you're offering. This then can actually enable people to decide whether they want to apply for the job, because as we know, some people are driven by the dollars, others are driven by different things. I had another one, Emily, and I think you've got one more, if I may just say, around how does an organisation set themselves up to be an employer of choice. I suppose employer of choice has been around now for the past 10 years or so, and it's certainly not about invalidating that or discounting it. But what I'm seeing and believe is that if you really want to position yourself as an employer of choice, then you have good process, you have good procedures, you have strong systems, and you have things like rewards and recognition in place. And so in that way, it's not just a one-off, it's a consistent message coming through so that people understand that this is an organisation they want to work for, it's an organisation that they want to stay and work with, and the message is becoming stronger and stronger, and in that way it becomes much more of a cultural change and a cultural fit. And so from an employer of choice perspective, I know that if I was looking for an employer, these are the things that I would be looking for. Are they actually taking place? Are these programs in place? Am I going to be inducted? Is there the opportunity for learning and development, career progression, succession planning? All of these elements from a HR perspective make up an employer of choice framework.
Cara P. asked how important it is to go back and deliver the message that a candidate is unsuccessful. It's extremely important. Yes, you could do a standard response, but the most important message I think I'm going to share from this one is that you actually respond. Time and time again, I've had candidates come to me and say, I've applied for 10, 15 positions and no one's come back to me. So you can standard response. I think if you're down to a short list of 2 or 3, it's really nice to give detailed feedback on why they were a decline to your business. So, yeah, absolutely go back, because who knows, in the future you may want them to come into a completely different role.
Yeah, definitely. Well, have we got time for one more, Emily?
Yes, I think as well, Anthony Allen wanted me to look at efficient screening for shortlist selection methods apart from the interview. I hope you took the message from the testing and the different things that we did prior to going into the interview. We used role plays, we used teamwork, we used presentations and watch people working together, to make a basis and a judgment on how they would work in the role, and using a competency-based scoring system to do that. So a whole heap of different ways and creative ways of doing it instead of just the box standard interview. But yeah, you can look at options before, during and after that interview that you need to do.
Emily, I have a bit of a sense that you and I could talk about this for hours.
We could.
And we are absolutely passionate about it. But look, I would like to close now, and in that way I'd like to thank my team and thank them for the work that they put into the webinar today and pulling it all together. And Emily, I would like to thank you as well.
Thank you.
It's been great having you on board, and I look forward to many more webinars with you. So again, thank you everyone, and signing out for now. Thank you.
Goodbye.